All right, so now that you've typed in your answer to the question, what am I solving for? Here's a few pieces of information you should write down. Okay, when dealing with an equation that has two distinct variables, and I don't want to give away what we're going to do next, read the instructions. Okay, that's key for these kind of problems. Always read the instructions because then they'll tell you what you need to solve for. Okay, once you identify what variable you're solving for, select the method you will use. A lot of times they'll tell you use the algebraic method. Sometimes they'll tell you use the geometric method. If they just ask you to solve, then you select which method you want to use. Okay, and always go with the one you feel a little bit comfortable with. And then the last part is take action. Right, go ahead and start solving. Okay, and so let's go take this equation, get this out of the way, and let's solve it. And my instructions here is solve for y. So that's step number one. Solve for y. That means I'm solving for who? I'm going to put a little asterisk right above it and say I got to solve for y. So my final answer, and I can kind of cheat here, is I should have y equals. Right? And for this problem and for the other problems, we're going to use the algebraic method. Okay? So if I'm using the algebraic method and I'm going to solve for y, I need to isolate y. That means I need to get it by itself. All right? So what's the first thing I'm going to do? Well, I notice that I have 3x's on both sides of the equation. I want to get them all to the right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Okay? Now, once that happens, I get a zero pair, and I get another zero pair, and I'm left with y equals 0x, or 0, minus 6. Well, 0 minus 6 simplifies to 6. And in fact, that's my final answer. Then by just changing 4 into y, it changed my whole answer, where this simplifies to y equals 6. That's it. The key thing here is the process. I read the instructions, I used my algebraic method, I finalized my final step, and I wrote down my answer. That's it. Trust the process that you're doing, so long as you made sure your undoing is accurate and your zero pairs are also accurate, then your answer will be accurate. Read your instructions, solve for y, select the method you're going to use. We said we're going to be using the algebraic method, and then I solve for that variable. Then I'm done. That's it. Okay? Let's do a couple more practices. There's two versions of the same equation. Read your instructions first. Solve for y. Okay, I'm going to solve for y. So again, I want to get y isolated, so I'm going to subtract 4x from both sides. I'm left with negative 2y equals 16 minus 4x. If you put negative 4x plus 16, it still will work. And my y here looks very sad. There we go. Now, I want to get y by itself. Well, I'm multiplying by negative 2, so I have to undo that multiplication by dividing by negative 2. But I also got to do it to each term that's on the right side of the equation. Okay? And by doing so, I get a giant 1. I'm left with positive y. Notice it's positive y, no longer negative. We don't want to solve for negative y. We're solving for positive y. 16 divided by negative 2, that is negative 8. Now, I take the sign with this term, negative, so negative 4 divided by negative 2 is a positive 2x. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, and my answer is 2x minus 8. And that is it. All we're doing is just simplifying this from one equation to another, as you can see. In the previous one, we ended up with an actual value, a constant. A lot of times, all it is just manipulating. So focus on instructions. If I'm using the algebraic method, I use my strategies accurately, okay? And then I end up with my isolated variable equals the rest of the expression. Then I'm done. That's it. I don't need to figure out what x is. I'm not being asked to do that. All I'm asked is to write this equation in this format, okay?